sounds good.
Are you coming to the tree with a strong upper man? This ain't murder 3. Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Raimundo Rios Mayo Library in Arkansas. And welcome to Strange Things. I'm your host, Chris James. This is season number 2, episode 3. It's January 21st, 2017, and tonight we are going to be talking to Jeff Cryptohulk Stewart. Jeff, are you there okay?
I am here and excited to be here.
All righty, fantastic. He was born in 1972 in Carthage, Texas. He grew up in Tenaha, Texas, as well as along the Sabine River. He could run a trout line and a trap line before he could read or write. Jeff attended Baptist Christian University on a football scholarship and later the University of Colorado. He studied theology, animal science, and electronics. Jeff holds a degree in theology and also electronics while holding certificates as a veterinarian technician. Jeff works as a journalist for Texas Fish and Game magazine as well as a few other publications. He has a weekly blog on fishgame.com. Jeff has been a cryptozoologist and investigator for over 20 years and has appeared on the Animal Planet's Finding Bigfoot, Discover Channel's Survivor Man Bigfoot with Les Stroud, as well as Destination America's Monsters and Mysteries in America. Jeff is well respected as one of the premier wildlife experts, as well as a cryptozoologist in Texas. Jeff is a lecturer and can be seen or heard yearly at the Texas Paranormal Unity Festival in Granbury, Texas, the Horror Con in Tyler, Texas, the Tyler Rose City Comic Con in Tyler, Texas, and the NatCon in Nacogdoches, Texas, just to name a few. Currently, Jeff lives in Tenaha, Texas with his wife Sharon. He has 2 adult children, Taylor Pate of Oxford, Mississippi, and Traven Stewart of Tenaha, Texas. Tell us, Jeff, when and where did you first become interested in Bigfoot?
You know, I guess it started back when I was a very small child. It was back in the, mid-'70s. Drive-in theaters were still very much part of culture, especially here in the South. There was drive-ins everywhere.
Everywhere.
And, sir?
Yes, everywhere.
Yeah. And so, every weekend, it didn't cost very much to go. My dad had this big panel van. It was a Ford, one of those big Ford cargo vans. And that's what we had for transportation, my mother, father, and my 2 sisters. And every weekend we would head to that drive-in. My dad would back into one of those slots where we could have 2 speakers. We'd throw the lawn chairs out and we would actually sit outside and watch the movie, in our lawn chairs. And I remember, there was always a double or triple feature going on. You would get there at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and you would be there until well after midnight. So many of those occasions, things like Boggy Creek would be one of those features playing, or Creature from Black Lake was another great one with Jack Elam. There were lots of horror and monster movies that played. And so I was always a huge fan of the monster movie and the horror movie and everything, and never even thought about Bigfoot actually being real. Any of these creatures actually being real. They were just things on the screen. I grew up hunted and fished my whole life, saw many strange things in the woods, but always passed them off as something, hey, that's just somebody I saw, or that was a hog or whatever. And then when I was 15 years old, I had a face-to-face encounter one night with a creature. As best I could describe it back then, it was a hairy man standing on two legs, covered in hair with mud clumped all in it. And I guess that made me say, oh my God, these things are real. And at that point in time, I started my quest in life of finding these things and just doing my best to prove that I'm not crazy, for one, because after you see something like that and you tell a few people, of course they make fun of you and tell you, yeah, you're nuts. But, I'm the kind of guy that, why would I say something like that to make people think I'm crazy or whatever, whenever, especially now in life, as being a respected wildlife expert, been on many outdoor programs and things like that. I could just as easily be just a respected outdoor and wildlife personality or person and really forget the Bigfoot and all of these things that go on if they weren't real. But when you've stood face to face at less than 20 feet, and in my later encounter, less than 5 feet from one of these creatures, you know that they're real. There's no question in your mind. There's no mistaken identity. There's just no room for error whenever you've been that close.
Where were you when this happened?
My first encounter was on the Sabine River. It was around 1986, 1987. I was 15 years old. A group of friends and myself were camping out on the Sabine River, as we often did. We had a camp house right on the edge of the riverbank, and we were behind locked gates on private property. So there was one road in and one road out, and you had to go through 3 locked gates in order to get to our cabin. So it wasn't like someone could just come in there and play a trick on me or something. So we were camping, and we had fished all day long, and we had caught a bunch of catfish. And one of our rituals we would do is we would skin our catfish, and we would leave the guts or place the guts in a certain area to where later on in the night we could go back over with flashlight and with a .22 rifle. And if there were raccoons or hogs or any kind of varmints, coyotes, anything, eating on those guts, we could shoot them, because I made my money as a teenager by trapping and selling hides. And if it was a hog, of course, that's an ice chest full of delicious barbecue.
Oh, yes.
So that evening we had eaten our fish and laying around the campfire, and I told my buddies, I said, hey, I'm fixing to go over there. Y'all want to come? And they're like, nah, you go ahead. We're fine. We're not as mad at them as you are, I guess is the way it could be put. And so I grabbed up my flashlight, and if anybody remembers, back mid-'80s, we did not have the 1200 lumen LED lights that we have now. Back then, if you were lucky, you had a 6-volt square type battery flashlight, but all I had was just a 2-cell C battery flashlight with a regular bulb. And so as I walked back over to where this was, I had my small .22 rifle with me, and it's probably about 100 yards or so from where we were camped to where we had cleaned our fish. And as I approached, I could see that there was something at the gut pile. And so I approached slowly and cautiously with my light as not to scare it away. And when I got probably about 20 yards, I could start to see definite form and everything. And the way it was they're eating, I thought it was a hog, reddish brown fur. Excuse me. It looked like a hog there. So I inched my way closer and closer and closer. And as I got within about 20 feet, it stood up, and it stood up on 2 legs. And I was raised in the woods, so anything that stood up on two legs, it had to be a man. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this is somebody playing a trick on me, or somebody, no human being is going to be sitting there eating fish guts, So I spoke and I said, mister, I don't know who you are, but this ain't funny. And it didn't say a word. It just looked at me. And I'm shining it right in the face and got a .22 rifle pointed straight at its face with the safety off. In which now .22 rifle is not very powerful. So, I mean, in my mind, I'm even sitting here going, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, once again, I'm like, mister, I don't know who you are, but this ain't funny. And it's steadily just looking at me. And I said, I'm going to shoot you. My exact words, I'm going to shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still just looking at me. And I never will forget. It never uttered a sound. It never opened its mouth or anything, but it never took its eyes, like looking me dead in my eyes. And it took 3 steps backwards, toe to heel. And I remember that distinctively because for some reason it stuck in my mind that, I've seen a few bears in my lifetime, and when a bear walks, they walk very clumsily.
Mm-hmm.
And they have little short, stubby legs, and they just don't look right. Especially walking backwards is very hard for them. And this thing walked backwards, and actually walked backwards very, very fluidly and very easily, and it was toe to heel as it walked backwards. And it took those 3 steps backwards, and when it got right into the edge of the wood line, because that's where the tree line was, when it got to there, I guess it felt safe being in a little bit of cover. It turned and walked very quickly away. Now, I'm still shining it and got a gun pointed at it, and it walked away. Now, the closest civilization is a public boat ramp and park, probably 5 miles through the woods or downriver. If someone had come up the river in a boat, we would have heard a boat motor. There's really no way anybody got in there to play a trick on me. And why would they? I mean, nobody ever come out and said, ha ha, I got you or anything. So, this thing, it stood over 6 feet tall. I'm 6 foot tall myself. I'm a big guy. This thing was probably somewhere in the probably 6'2" to 6'5" at the most. I would say body weight somewhere in that 250 plus pound range. Very athletic build. I mean, muscular build. It didn't necessarily look like an athlete, but I mean, it was very muscularly built, very stout, very robust looking. The fur was sparse, especially on the face. Not a whole lot on the face. It had been wallowing in the mud, and which makes really good sense because in East Texas, in the middle of the summer, I mean, mosquitoes are as big as hummingbirds, and they'll do their number on you.
They'll carry you off.
And, oh, yes, they're harsh. And so, every animal around here just about it wallows in the mud because the mosquitoes, the ticks, the fleas, the deer flies. I mean, in East Texas, everything wants to bite you or poke you. And the fur on its body was longer, still not really thick fur, kind of sparse fur, but where it had been wallowing in the mud, it was clumped up and hung like dreadlocks kind of off of its body. And it had been wallowing in that old gray river bottom, what we call gumbo looking mud. And it had been wallowing in it, and it kind of had a gray, you could tell that it was red fur, but of course it had a gray, almost, when it was dry, almost a whitish look to it where it was on the skin. But the face, if you've ever seen an Australian Aboriginal person,
yes,
like some of the old pictures from the turn of the century, or I say the turn of the century, from 1800s to 1900s, that century. Sometimes I forget that we turned a century not long ago. But that broad nose with large nostrils, but not inhuman looking. It was still within human parameters. The large lips, large wide mouth, but still within, on the exaggerated side of human proportions, but still within human proportions. Mm-hmm. The eyes were the same way. I mean, it really and truthfully, it looked like an Aboriginal person in the face, but its skin was very, very dark, a mahogany looking skin, and it looked like leather. If you've ever seen the leather like on a car seat or mm-hmm. something, a black leather of an aged seat where it's got the cracks mm-hmm. and the wrinkles and got the creases in it and everything, and that's what it had. It had those on its forehead and under its eyes and around the nose and the mouth. It kind of had that aged, sun-dried leather look.
Wow.
On the face. And the eyes I remember distinctly because I was staring it right in the eyes. It had whites to the eyes. It did not have those big, dead, doll-looking eyes like you've seen mm-hmm. in some questionable photographs. You know, it didn't have those big, huge, shark-looking eyes, those black eyes. It had whites to the eyes. The mm-hmm. sclera, you know, it had the whites. You could see the pupils. You could see all of that. And you could see that it had brown eyes. And you could see now the whites were a little yellow, almost jaundiced looking, but you could definitely tell it was whites of the eyes. Mm-hmm. And it just, like I said, it just walked backwards into the woods and disappeared. I told a few people, went back excitedly, told my friends. And the next morning we went back over there where the guts were, and I wear a size 14 shoe. Mm-hmm. And there were footprints there, and I could step in those footprints with my shoes on and still not cover up the footprint. The footprint was bigger than my size 14 shoe. Mm. And that was a bare footprint, you know, it was just, mm-hmm. you know, a little footprint. And my friends, of course, are like, yeah, you know, you're hoaxing us. You're playing a joke on us. You made that footprint and all this, that, and the other, trying to scare us. And I'm like, how did I make this footprint? Y'all rode down in the same truck I did. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't have a bag full of Bigfoot tracks in the back seat. You know, I mean, when did I do this? You know, I mean, come on. And I got made fun of a little bit, so I shut up. I didn't say another word to anybody about it for probably about 10 to 15 years. Mm-hmm. And my father and I had been fishing, and we had caught a rather large catch of catfish, probably 150 or so pounds of fish. And we had what we call a live box, which is made up of two old chicken coops that are wired together, and it has a spring hinged lid that you have to depress the spring in order to open the lid. And we would put our fish in this and then float it out into the river so that the fish stayed alive until we were ready to clean them. Mm-hmm. We'd caught our fish, we'd placed them in that. I'd put them in the box, secured the lid, even tied a small piece of rope around it to make sure that for, you know, somebody coming by in a boat or something, just making sure it didn't come open. Mm-hmm. The next morning, my dad said, hey, you know, let's go clean those fish and let's fry them up today. So I said, okay, Dad. So my father and I drove down, and when we got to where our campsite was, our fish box was totally pulled out of the water. Now, this box probably weighs 60, 70 pounds by itself. Mm-hmm. And it had 150, just estimating 150 or more pounds of fish in it. And something grabbed the rope and pulled this box completely out of the water. I mean, it was up on dry land. And had untied the rope, depressed the spring latch, opened the door, and sat there and ate about 25 or 30 fish. It sat there, and all the meat was eaten off of the backbones of the fish, and the heads were thrown on the ground. Mm. And it was so fresh that the fish that were still in the box were still alive. And here's the funny thing, you know, we're still behind all those locked gates on private property. And it was February. That morning that we went down there, it was 34 degrees. There was a frost on the ground. There were bare, human-looking footprints all around our fish box. And my dad, I never will forget my dad, he looks at me and he goes, "It's true." And I said, "What's true, Dad?" And he said, "All those stories you told about Bigfoot." He said, "It's true." And I said, "Yeah, Dad, it always was true." And at that point, it was like a big weight off my shoulders because now my father believed me. It was kind of hurtful that, you know, my own father and mother didn't believe that I had what I had seen. You know, I mean, they were, "Oh boy, please don't tell people that," you know?
Yes.
So, you know, my dad's like, "It's real." And we're sitting there and I've heard people, you know, people have said, well, somebody may have done that. And I'm like, I understand that. Somebody could have done that. But you're talking about somebody that is barefooted in 34-degree weather walking around in river bottom mud. That, you know, when you step in that mud, it came up well above the ankle.
And it's cold.
Yeah, was strong enough to pull 150 pounds of fish and a 60-pound box completely out of the water up onto dry land. Now, it would have been easy to have pulled it up to the edge of the bank, opened it up, reached in there, and got something out of it. But instead, this pulled it completely out of the water.
That is amazing.
Then it had to have dexterity. Dexterity of fingers. Good enough to untie the knot. And I'm a good knot tire. I don't tie granny knots. I mean, I tie clove hitches and things like that. So it had to untie a knot. Then it had to depress a spring latch. This thing wasn't busted open. I mean, it was depressed and opened. And then it sat there and ate raw fish, skin and all, while it sat there in 34-degree weather standing in the mud ankle deep. Now, you tell me what human being walked in, because our gates were not unlocked, what human being walked in several miles down those dirt roads just to sit there in cold, wet mud and eat raw fish.
A lot of people who will say somebody put wooden shoes on their feet and walked around leaving these depressions, they've never actually tried putting a slab of wood on the bottom of their foot and taking a step. It's kind of like walking in skis. You can't step from one place to another, and yet they will insist, "Oh, it was just some guy with wooden feet." Apparently, they don't know much about physiology.
Exactly. And especially, I mean, you know, this was, you know, mid-90s when this happened, mid to late 90s when this happened. And, you know, you're sitting there and you're going, excuse me, there was no big internet push then. There was no finding Bigfoot. There was, you know, Bigfoot was not the craze at that time. Unless you lived in the cryptozoology world, I mean, there was no cryptozoology world in the 90s other than a few of our groundbreaking members of cryptozoology, you know, Mr. Hobelmans and Lauren Coleman and a few of those guys, you know, they were around, but I mean, I'm sure they weren't down at my place making fake tracks, you know. I mean,
it doesn't add up.
Nobody would have wanted to have impressed me by making a fake Bigfoot print. And then you still got the eating fish, you know. I like sushi myself, but I don't like eating raw catfish on the riverbank.
No, I can't think of too many people that would call that a meal.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So that happened. And then I had a couple more incidences where fish came up missing out of my fish boxes, and it never was to that scale. And we always blamed it on somebody, you know, coming up the river in a boat and seeing our fish box and stealing our fish out of our box or something like that, you know. But later on, I got to thinking, you know, it may not have been somebody coming up the river and stealing the fish. It may have been something walking up there, done sat in the woods and watched me put fish in this box over many years. Because, I mean, I've camped, fished, and hunted in this exact same spot. I mean, my dad was taking me when I was 6 months old. He'd put formula in an ice chest and a bag of diapers in the truck, and he took me fishing with him.
Wow.
So my family has fished, camped, hunted, and everything in the same spot for a couple of generations. So these things have sat out there in the woods, and they've watched us put fish in this box, and they're sitting there going, you know what, that's an easy meal.
Tell me, having a theology degree, how does that mix with your Bigfoot investigations? Does it fit in, or does it kind of clash a bit?
Well, to me, it fits in perfectly. I've had a lot of people try to tell me that, you know, you can't believe in creationism and God and believe in these monsters and things that you believe in. And I'm like, why not? The Bible says God created man. God created the beasts of the field, the birds of the air. God created it. It does not specifically go through there and say exactly what beasts of the field or birds of the air God created. So in my mind, I'm sitting here and I'm going, you know what? There is too much scientific evidence for other life forms that we didn't talk about. You know, there's 66 books in the Bible, but that's not all of them. The Bible was translated from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we know because it's been talked about and it's been written about, the Vatican, there are hundreds and hundreds of Dead Sea Scrolls that have never been translated. Because they're in such bad shape, they are destroyed. You know, if you touch them, they crumble because these things are so old, thousands of years old. And if you touch them, they crumble. So we don't know what was written about on the scrolls that we have never got to read or we've never got to know about.
Plus, there's no telling how many scrolls they haven't found yet. There might be hundreds of them hidden away in a cave somewhere, that just waiting for some goat herder to come along and stumble upon them.
And how do we know that some terrorist zealot or whatever has not found those scrolls and set them on fire?
Oh, yes. They would probably do that if they were given a chance.
You know, we've seen video after video of where some of these other religions have went into these temples and taken sledgehammers and destroyed artifacts that can never be replaced. I saw one recently where they took, they had sledgehammers and they were just beating these sculptures, these statues that were carved thousands and thousands of years ago. They were just breaking them and beating them and, you know, destroying them. And you got to wonder, you know, how much of our history has been destroyed by someone who did not want us to know. It did not fit their agenda, therefore they destroyed it.
That is a good possibility.
And so my belief in Bigfoot and everything, and which I don't believe in Bigfoot. I have to change that. I don't believe in Bigfoot. I'm not a Bigfoot believer. I'm a Bigfoot knower. And I know that may not be the correct terminology, but I like using it because if you believe in something, you can believe in something that you've never seen, you've never heard, or I can believe in the tooth fairy. Does not make the tooth fairy real. I've never seen the tooth fairy, but I have seen creatures in the woods walking on two legs that were covered in hair that, for lack of a better term, we describe as Bigfoot. We describe as Sasquatch. Okay. I've seen it. I've been there. I've been face to face with it. My most recent encounter, I was close enough I could hear it breathing. Watch it blink its eyes. I mean, I was 5 feet away. So my theology tells me that, you know, God created Adam and Eve, and I don't mean to offend anyone that's listening. If you're not a Christian or whatever, I mean, you have the right to believe ever how you want to. These are just my personal ones. God created Adam and Eve, and it says, though, that they were the first two beings created in his own image. Did not say they were the first two beings ever created. Did not say they were whatever. It just says that the first two created in his own image. Then they had sons. They had Cain and Abel. And they took wives. It says they took wives from the land of Nod. Well, where did these wives come from if Adam and Eve were the only people? Well, they had to take wives from somewhere.
Yeah, that's a problem a lot of people try to explain and can't.
Well, the thing is, God created Adam and Eve. They were the first. It says they were the first. We don't actually know after he created them what he created. What we read about is what someone sat around campfires telling for thousands of years. And finally, when written language was developed, somebody's like, hey, we got to write this down before we lose this. And so then they wrote it down. And we don't know what God created after he created Adam and Eve, before all the other parables and all the other things started in the Bible. God may have created all kinds of stuff, all kinds of beings. We know through scientific evidence that there were prehistoric human beings. Man, there was Heidelbergensis. There was, oh my goodness, Neanderthal. And there were just Homo sapiens, and us, you know. And I mean, before that, there was Homo whatever. I mean, man, there was just so many different things that we find bits and pieces of skulls and teeth and things and this and that. Bones, you know, somebody comes up with, and they're like, man, these bones are like X many years old. And, you know, we've found a confirmation of, you know, this upright walking person.
Yes.
So there's scientific evidence that they were there. I can't just be one of these people that says, well, because it doesn't say it in my Bible, I don't believe it. I'm not like that.
Very good.
I believe in God.
Fantastic
but
point.
At the same time, I'm a scientist.
We're going to take a real quick break here. We kind of skipped the first one because I didn't want to interrupt you. You were way too interesting.
I'm so sorry.
No, no problem. We'll just take about a 2-minute break, play a couple commercials, and we will be right back after these. So please don't go anywhere. Stand by for more with Jeff Stewart. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Ederby Day, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Trike. Life is too short to drink bad coffee.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to the show. With us tonight is Jeff Stewart, and we're talking about Bigfoot. Tell me, where did you and Brian MP first meet?
Oh, man. You know, Brian would probably remember the actual first meeting better than me. All I remember is that Brian, my fan page or something, I don't really remember, Brian approached me and he was like, hey, man, you know, I think, you know, I like what you're saying. I like what you're writing. I like all of this. And, you know, I'd like to learn more. You know, he asked me, you know, he said, would you be willing to teach me? I know nothing about the woods, the outdoors, and all of these things. Would you be willing to teach me? And I was like, I mean, he was such a genuine person and so nice. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, you know, I will. I would love to. And so we set up a date and he came down and camped with me, and I kind of blew his mind on that first camping trip because he was into Bigfoot, but he had never had any kind of an encounter. And we actually had, a couple of animals, a couple of Bigfoot, circle our encampment. I took him camping, my style of camping, which is go way out in the middle of the woods. I take a tarp, stretch it between a couple of trees with a rope, make a little A-frame tent, sleep under that. I don't take hardly any amenities whatsoever. You're just camping hard, old school style. So we're sitting around our little fire, and you're hearing these footsteps out and just outside of vision. And I'm telling him, you know, just chill out. And then right outside of our eyesight from camp, what the campfire would light up, you hear this, and Brian's eyes get about big around his dinner saucers, and he's like, what the heck was that? And I said, that, my friend, I can't tell you. And he said, what do you mean you can't tell me? I said, I can't tell you what it was, but I can tell you what it wasn't. And that's one of my key things. I can tell you what things aren't, because I know the sound that every indigenous and domestic animal makes in my woods, from the smallest of birds to the largest of predators. It doesn't matter. I know their sounds. And I'm like, that right there, there's nothing in these East Texas woods that makes that sound.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I've ever heard are recordings of from South America of howler monkeys and other primates making similar sounds. But I've never heard a deer make that sound. I've never heard a hog make that particular sound. I've never heard coyotes of any kind or any other thing that we have in East Texas make that particular sound. And he was hooked from then on. We became fast friends, messaging each other daily, to him bringing his kids and camping with me and bringing them and spending the night at my house and just spending time with our families. And it has just went from kind of being a mentor a little bit to a guy to being the best of friends.
Amazing.
And there's probably nobody better out there in the Bigfoot world that you would ever want to be a friend with, because this guy will bend over backwards for a true friend. I mean, he will go to the ends of the earth for a friendship. And so there's no, in my book, I mean, Brian Impey just, is top hand.
Oh,
That's about all you can say. He's a top hand.
Having worked in the Hollywood crowd when you were on with Les Stroud and the Finding Bigfoot folks, how accurately did they present your information?
I've got to say I was really pleased going into my contract with Finding Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried because that show kind of has a bad reputation for belittling certain people and saying certain things. And so when I went into that, whenever I had my contract with them, I had it put in my contract that they in no way could make me look foolish or belittle me and my research in any way, shape, or form.
That sounds like a wise thing
they
to
did
do.
not.
Fantastic.
Les Stroud, I did not have to worry about that. Les Stroud and his entire crew were some of the most upstanding and straightforward individuals. I spent 9 days in the woods with Les Stroud.
Wow.
I can say that was a once-in-a-lifetime event that I cherished. I made a lifelong friendship with him. We email and text one another when he's not busy or out filming and things. Of course, whenever he has his own personal private time, he'll answer my text and get back with me. And just sometimes I'll just get a text from him saying, "Hey, how are you doing?
Fantastic.
How's your family?" So, I mean, Les Stroud is just a stand-up guy. Monsters and Mysteries in America, I worked with them quite extensively. A lot of people don't know, not only did I film my episode with them, but they also hired me after that to be a content creator for the show Monsters and Mysteries in America. And we actually worked on the next season, which never actually happened. We had some really killer shows planned out, and I worked behind the scenes on shows for them that actually didn't get aired, but they were going to be some killer shows. But they were good people. They treated us really well. They portrayed mine better than they did my good friend Mike Woolley, who was on the same episode I was. Well, a lot of people, they see his and they ask, why was he deer hunting at 3:00 in the morning sitting on a deer stand? He wasn't.
Yeah.
He told them that it was 3:00 in the afternoon, and for some reason they thought, or whatever, he said 3 in the morning. And so when they did his reenactment, they had some guy sitting up in a deer stand at 3:00 in the morning, and it kind of made his story not look so well. But the entire true account, I have a book that's fixing to come out, and it's called Sabine Things, because the Sabine thing is what I do a lot of my research on. That's what we call our Bigfoot here, is the Sabine thing. So my book is going to be entitled Sabine Things, and it's going to have Mike's encounter in it, word for word, straight out of Mike's mouth, exactly what happened. It's going to have my encounters, but it's also going to have other tales of not just Bigfoot. It's going to have Chupacabra. It's going to have hellhounds and different ghostly tales from around East Texas and from around the Sabine River.
Amazing. Whenever you get your book out, you'll have to come back on the show and we'll talk about it and let the people know what you've got written down.
I definitely would. I just handed in one manuscript to the publishers here. I have to wait until it's an anthology type book. I can't really give out any details about it yet, but it should be out, I think, March. And closer to that date, I'll be able to share the name of the book and the other people that are going to be in it with me that have donated. I say donated. I hope it's not donated. I hope they can get something out of it. But we're gonna do good.
Fantastic. Are you interested in other things out of the ordinary? UFOs, ghosts, things along that line?
Do what? You broke up a little bit.
Are you interested in other items like UFOs, ghosts, things not Bigfoot related?
Yes. I do a lot of investigations, paranormal investigations. I have actually had I'm an ordained minister, and I have actually done some house blessings, some evictions of unwanted spirits. I'll say it like that.
Yeah.
Actually encountered a demon dog, and dispatched that animal many years ago. That story will be in the book. It is a very harrowing tale of life and death, battling this dog that would not die. I have investigated the chupacabra in all around East Texas and South Texas. Actually captured what was claimed to be a chupacabra.
Have you been to Phyllis Canyon's ranch at any time?
Have not been to Miss Phyllis's place. I was in close contact with Ken Gerhard while he was there. Ken and I were discussing a lot of tactics and a lot of things while he was there, trying to either catch one of these or dispatch one of these animals while he was there. And I worked with Ken closely on some of the aspects of his endeavors there on her ranch. Ken is a very good friend. Ken is another one of those stand-up guys that, man, I wouldn't be where I am today without guys like Ken Gerhard, Lyle Blackburn, Brian Impey, those guys that have just supported me and gave me a leg up and patted me on the back when I needed it and kicked me in the butt when I needed it. And, but yeah, I haven't been to the ranch, but I've worked a little bit on that with Ken.
Ken was on the show a while ago, and it was probably the best interview I'd ever done. And there was a technical problem, and the entire show was lost. We're trying to get him back on, hopefully next month. But it's just one of those things. Man, too much computer.
Ken.
Yes.
Yeah. Ken is, I've been on Ken's show. Ken's been on when I had my show, The Crypto Zoo. Ken was on it. Oh my gosh, man. He is the thing that makes Ken such a wonderful interview is the fact that Ken is just Ken. It doesn't matter whether you run into him in the grocery store, you've got him on your show, or you see him on TV. Ken is just Ken.
Yes.
He doesn't change to be anything else other than Ken.
It's amazing when you meet these people, you see them on TV, and it's like, oh, that's that guy from Missing in Alaska and all these other shows. You walk up to them and start talking to them, and they're like they've known you their entire lives. They're not these stuck-up Hollywood types that, unfortunately, we've kind of had to get used to in the past.
And I'll tell you another guy that's just that way, James Fay Bobo from Finding Bigfoot. He and I became the best of friends. We talk to each other constantly. I mean, it's like almost, I won't say daily, but at times it is daily. But he's another one of those guys that is, you meet him for 5 minutes and you feel like you grew up with the guy. I mean, it's just that genuine of a human being. And I'm going to tell you what, if he finds out a friend is in need, he will go above and beyond to see that friend is not in need any longer.
Fantastic.
He is such a great guy.
Yeah, I've looked at the character the way he is on the TV show. And after watching it for a while, you do get the impression that that's him. He's not playing a part. That's him for real.
I will say this. The only thing is, back when the show first came on, they portrayed Bobo as kind of a lumbering,
Yes.
not the smartest guy in the world, and that is so far from the truth because
Mhm.
he is so intelligent and he is so just awesome. He's just not a very talkative person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not like me running off at the mouth 90 miles an hour. He is a very quiet person that, unless he has something important to say, he doesn't just throw words out.
Mm-hmm.
And so people don't get a chance to know him like they should, but they have in later seasons, and it's really came out. But I'm going to tell you, as far as knowledge of everything, people would be surprised to know that Bobo's probably the most knowledgeable of any of the cast members on Finding Bigfoot.
That's so out of character.
Cliff may be the most educated.
Mm-hmm.
Cliff may be the most educated, but as far as the most knowledgeable, Bobo is unmatched on that team.
Oh, Cliff was a school teacher, and they've got to be smarter than the kids they talk to. Smarter than the
Cliff's a great guy, too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Cliff Barrickman is a wonderful individual. We had great conversations. He's a little bit stuffier than Bobo. He's a little bit, I hate to say stuck up, but he's one of those, like we talked about, he's not as approachable. And I think it has nothing to do with him trying to be horse's rear end or anything. It's just who he is. I mean, you get him face to face and he's a nice guy, but he probably gets bombarded by so many Lulus in this world that he's probably had to harden his exterior just a little bit in order to deal with it. Where a guy like Bobo, it just rolls off of his back. He is such a surfer type mentality guy that he doesn't let anything bother him like that. He just lets it roll off. And that just makes him, everybody on that show has their own individual personality. And when you get to know them, I spent 7 days with them, with their crew. We traveled. They came down here with me, and then I traveled with them over the rest of the state of Texas while they filmed. They asked me to actually go and film with them.
Wow.
And there was a lot of talk back and forth between their producers and myself of me being on that show more later on, but it never came to fruition. So, oh well, a lot of stuff on TV shows and Hollywood and this kind of stuff, man. I have been in so many negotiations for so many different things that never happened. It is just unbelievable.
Do you have any other different approach? Not different approaches. Just Bigfoot stories where you've had a sort of an encounter or something that you just want to get off your chest, kind of thing.
Not really, the ones that I want to get off my chest. I guess the most exciting Bigfoot encounter that I had was back about 2013. My father and I had went down to our fishing camp, that same place that we've had all our encounters and all this stuff. And we looked at the water. We were planning on taking a fishing trip over the next few days. And when we were leaving, we get to a certain spot where my dad knows that there are a lot of mayhaw trees, which mayhaw is a little fruit, kind of like a little apple. Looks about like a cherry, a little smaller. But it's kind of an appley flavor to it, and it grows down in these wetlands and these what we call sloughs. And this was a dried up slough bed. And my dad wanted me to walk down it and see if I could find any mayhaws so we could make some jelly. So I grabbed my rifle and my camera, left my dad, he's elderly, left him in the truck. And I started walking down the slough. I'd made it several hundred yards from the truck. And I heard a loud crash in the bushes next to me. So I walked over to see what had crashed there because there weren't any trees big enough for a limb of that size to have fallen out of over where I heard the noise. Excuse me. So I thought, maybe it was a hog or something busting through the brush over there. So I walked over, and laying there was a limb I'd say about 6 or 8 inches around. or maybe bigger. And it was about 2.5, maybe 3 feet long. And I looked at it. It was a solid piece of wood. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow, where'd this come from? And blah, blah, blah. And I hear this thud right behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, 5, 6 feet or a little more behind me. Maybe 10 feet. And I turned around, and when I turned around, crouched on the ground right behind me was this creature. Its hands were flat on the ground. Its butt was resting on its heels. And it was looking up at me. My first instinct was I grabbed my rifle. And then I let go of the rifle and grabbed my camera. The lens cap was on my camera. I got the lens cap off, and when I let go of the lens cap, it hit the side of the camera and made that plastic against metal noise. This is a really nice digital camera with lenses and all that. And it dinged against the side of the camera. And at that point, it took off, it sprinted. And I played college football with guys that, ran 4.3 second 40-yard dashes. Mm-hmm. This thing would have smoked them. When it took off, it covered about a 60-yard clearing in about 3 seconds.
Man.
And when it took off, it was running using all fours, basically. And I was snapping pictures, snap, 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 as it was running. I got a couple of blurry photos of it while it was running. And they used those photos on Finding Bigfoot.
What they call blob squatches.
Yeah, I don't show them much to anyone because I don't believe in the blob squatch pictures. I think the blob squatch pictures kind of demean us in a point, because here's the thing. I'm not going to show you a picture and say, look, that's Bigfoot, if all it looks like is a stump.
Yes.
But I'm not going to expect you just to take my word that was Bigfoot. I see pictures all the time that just, one of my pet peeves in the Bigfoot community is when people take a picture and they draw circles around all these things. Look, this is a Bigfoot. 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 No. Send me a photograph and I will look at it. The bare, unedited, untouched photograph. If I get a photograph that's been edited in any way, I immediately throw it out. I will not look at it. And if you've got circles drawn around something, I'm not going to look at it. Because if Bigfoot is there, I'm going to see it whether you draw a circle around it or not. If it's not there and you draw a circle around it, I get them all the time. Look at this face. And I'm like, right. I can see a face in the wood grain on my door. I saw Jesus in my cereal this morning. Our mind plays tricks on us, and we see faces where there are no faces.
What do they call it? Pareidolia?
Yeah, pareidolia or whatever it is.
It's a scientist.
I just don't believe in that.
No, it's a scientist's way of trying to explain things that they can't.
Yeah, so I don't show my blob squatch pictures just because I respect, just like you, I respect you more than to show you a blob squatch picture and ask you to believe it. You don't know me. We've never met. We've texted back and forth a few times about the show and this, that, and the other. But you and I don't know each other well enough for you to take me just at my word. I tell people all the time, I enjoy relaying my stories, relaying my research. I want you to use your mind, your intellect, your reasoning, and decide whether you believe me or not. If you don't believe me, be respectful. You don't have to make rude comments or anything else. If you don't believe me, fine. Don't buy my books. Don't read my blogs. Don't visit my pages or anything. I'm okay with that. I respect the individual.
Do you have other books?
But
you said you have books out, or is that figurative speaking?
I have short stories. I also write horror short stories. I have one called Meat. It is out. It is a kind of a Bigfoot horror, but we don't in there. The creature is not called a Bigfoot. You don't really know what the creature is, but it likes to eat people.
Ooh.
So that story is out in a book called, oh my goodness, Tales from the Con. As that book, and it is out. Local bookstores have it. I don't know. Good friend of mine, George Jones, actually printed the book, got the book published and everything. He is a promoter for conventions, comic book conventions and things like that. And he's a really good friend, and he put my stories in a book for me.
That's good.
Like I said, I have the one that's coming up now. Most of my stuff is magazine, newspaper journalism, magazine journalism, blogging, things like that. And a lot of it is more to do with the wildlife, fishing, hunting, animals in general, animal rescue, animal rehabilitation, things like that I do and I write about, blog about, and everything. But this my big breakthrough is going to be the book that's supposed to be coming out in March. Going to be got involved with this project. It is a very prestigious project. I feel like a little fish swimming in a big tank with the talent that I was asked to write with. Guys like Lyle Blackburn, Ken Gerhard, oh my gosh, just so many more that have been part of this project. And I was lucky and honored enough to be asked to be part of it, and it's going to be really nice when it comes out in a few months.
Fantastic. Do you ever make it up to the Jefferson Bigfoot Conference?
You know, I do not get to that conference. One, for some reason, I do not know why, even though I am only an hour and a half from Jefferson, where I live, I've never been invited to the Jefferson Bigfoot Conference as a speaker or as a VIP or anything. And at that particular point in time, I have, for the past 3 years, been invited to Granbury to the Texas Paranormal Unity Fest.
That's because Brian Empey is part of their logistics.
Sir?
I believe that is because Brian Empey is part of their logistics at the Paranormal Conference.
Brian is this year, yes. Brian is part of our stuff. This will be his actual first year being as part of the coordination team, but Brian has been a part of this for a couple of years. He's emceed and done different things. Brian is an amazing, like I said, can't talk good enough about O'Brien. I mean, you just can't. But that Paranormal Unity Fest, it is a charity festival. We raise money. The first year that I did it, we were raising money for cancer. Actually, it was for a fund that provides lodging and meals whenever cancer patients are being treated at a hospital. This organization, forgive me for not being able to call their name, it's been several years ago, they actually will help pay for lodging and meals for the families and patients as they're going through cancer treatment away from home. And the past couple of years, we have raised money for a battered women's shelter there in the Dallas area. And, you know, when I get the opportunity to raise money for charity, I can't say no. If it is to where I can do it, I will say yes, because giving back if we don't give back, there's something wrong with us.
Oh, yes.
If we don't help others, then how can we ever expect to be helped?
That is a fantastic point. Well, we have run just a little bit past the end of the show, so we're going to have to call it a night. I really appreciate you being on the show tonight, and like I said, as soon as your book comes out, get with me and we'll put you back on and have you tell the listening audience all about it. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back with you, but as far as strange things go, this is the end of the show. Tune in next week, and we will be revisiting the UFO phenomenon. Hopefully we'll have some new stories that people aren't too familiar with. And for all of us at Strange Things, I hope you've enjoyed the show.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder 3. Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?